Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be discussing Senku Ishigami, the protagonist of Dr. Stone. Let's get into it. In particular, we're going to be discussing whether Senku is an actual genius. Now, in the first episode, his feats alone are enough to qualify him as a genius of some sort. To be exact, he shows that he was awake during those 3,700 years being covered by stone and in that infinite darkness, and he was counting the entire time in order to have an accurate representation of real world time. The exact number that he states is 116,427,065,530 seconds. Now that's a long time. And he later states that that's a good roughly 3,700 years, and that's extraordinarily close to the actual amount. The actual amount, when you do the math, is 3,691.878 or 0.88, just for rounding's sake. And so he's really close. He's only off by 8.12 years. That's really close. And and it's safe to say that he did this in his head and not, after he woke up and just, wrote the numbers in some sand and just did long division. Because he later also states that waking up in the spring is a necessary requirement for starting a civilization. And so if he woke up in the winter, he would have obviously been naked and he would have just died of the cold. And trying to find food, it would have been, in his own words, trying to find food would have been an instant game over. And so that's an extraordinary feat. There are very few people on the face of this planet that are capable of doing that sort of math in their head. And we can also see another one of his best feats. I'm just going to be referring to them as feats. I know feats usually refers to physical feats, but I think mental ones also count in that scenario. Let me just, it works with the definition, so we'll just go with it. In episode 5, when his neck is almost broken and we think he's dying, or rather he's dead, Taiju's thinking about all of his feats as a child and what he'd accomplished and how much he'd loved science. And so we see Senku 3, in the sense that basically Senku had created 3 rockets. Senku 1, which utterly failed, Senku 2, which did relatively well, and Senku 3, which reached orbit, which is quite incredible, really. I mean, according to Google, it takes 5 years to start and finish a rocket that can take people into outer space. Now, we'll chalk it up to the fact that, Senku 3 didn't really carry people, it just went itself. So we'll say that's about half the time. I think that's being too generous, but we'll say half the time. But it took Senku even less than that, because throughout that entire time, he looks virtually the exact same as when he makes Senku 1 to when he makes Senku 2 to when he makes Senku 3. And he really wasn't that old back then. You got to realize 5 years, or we'll just say 2.5, just to be really generous. 2.5 is including some of the world's smartest people, and not just one person, teams and teams of people doing unending math, unending calculations in order to make sure that the rocket takes off safely and it reaches where it's supposed to. And he also has a vast amount of knowledge about things that are not his field. I think it's pretty obvious to say that he's more of a physics and chemistry sort of guy rather than a biology one. But we also see in episode 8, which as of this recording is the latest episode, he is thinking about making an antibiotic in order to help the sister, I can't remember her name to save my life, good lord. And he's talking about how there's 2 plausible ways to getting around to creating antibiotics. There is a biological route to make penicillin from living things, and there's also a synthetic route in order to take stone and make sulfur drugs from rocks. And in real life, we actually have 3 possible ways of doing it. We have the biological route, as he said. We have the synthetic route, as he said, and we also have a semi-synthetic route. But we can just chalk this up to this not being his field of expertise, and it's just basic mistakes that really anyone could make, or really. But so all of this would lead you to believe that he's obviously a scientist and I'm just a dumbass. And, well, I mean, I am, but that's not the point. He later also, but the thing is, in that same episode, he also says, and I quote here, "We're neither gods nor geniuses." So he's referring to himself as not a genius. Now, this could just be, a man downplaying his own feats. Like, a very famous quote is, someone asked Albert Einstein once how it felt to be the smartest man alive. And he went, "I don't know. You'll have to ask Nikola Tesla." And Nikola Tesla himself also says that he really isn't that smart. He just likes to be alone, and he spends more time with problems than most people do. That's really it. And most of the people that I can find, barring on some really egotistical geniuses, they all consider themselves to not be geniuses. So this could just be Senku going, well, I'm not really a genius. Just because he's being kind and he's not being egotistical. And so, is he a genius? I think all of his feats really do qualify it. And to be exact, I mean, when you search up the word genius, the exact definition is, one sec, I really should, I'm not searching this up right now, I don't know what you guys are talking about. An exceptional intellectual or creative power or natural ability. Now, exceptional is also a word that's comparative. In order to be exceptional, you have to compare yourself to something. I can be exceptional at math compared to a 3-year-old, but it's not the same, right? Exceptional means unusual and not typical, and typical by its very definition means normal. And so in the stone world, Senku is definitely not normal because he's the only one with a science background of some degree. Everyone else, really, the entire village considers science to be sorcery and alchemy, so I think we can safely say they have very little understanding of science. And Senku is in that same episode explaining to them how it's the Earth that's moving around the sun and not vice versa, and that the entire planet is moving. And he's also explaining that, and then she asks a dumb question like, well, if the Earth is moving, why don't I go flying off? And he goes, well, gravity. And so, yeah, by that definition, he's a genius. But by that definition, any of us with a modicum of basic science knowledge, if we did basic chemistry in like grade 11 and 12, well, we know what we're talking about and we'd be considered geniuses. And so by that logic, yeah, he is. But the question is, would he be a genius if if everyone was brought back to life right now? Not exactly. I wouldn't go that far. I would, I feel like, and the best word I could use to qualify him would be a prodigy and not a genius exactly. A prodigy is really very similar to, is very similar to a genius, but exactly, it's a person, especially a young one, endowed with exceptional abilities or qualities. And really what makes them different from a genius is really just experience. If Senku had another, 10 years of his science and, the world hadn't become the stone world, he would have been one of the smartest people on the face of the planet. But he is still not ready to be qualified a genius just because of his young age. He's by far an incredible prodigy, and that's something very few people can deny. You can, again, you can equate it to, he said that he was not a genius. Yeah, he was just downplaying himself, all right? It's pretty obvious to say. And so that's the best thing I can go with. I'm not quite sold on the idea of calling him a genius, but am I ready to call him a prodigy? Hell yeah, because he's incredibly smart. All right, well, that about covers it. I really hope you guys liked the video. Please like, comment, subscribe. It'd piss off all the people who don't think who's smart. So do it just for that. I'll catch you all on the flip side. I'm out.